And we got a newbie.
Oh no.
Turned out there was a 3-car accident on the bridge.
Uh-oh.
Could have been worse. You could have been in
How y'all doing tonight? You are here? Anybody do any reading?
Yes, I have.
All right.
Yeah, I got the Harvard
I have a
too.
question.
Yeah. Go for it.
Why Joseph?
Why Joseph?
Why did God pick him to be the one that went to Egypt?
Because he was called the dreamer.
I know that.
He's called the dreamer.
Since you would have sent somebody to Egypt to interpret dreams,
He had to
He
be
could
the
have
dreamer.
given that ability to another child. I just thought
Yeah.
that maybe there was another reason, that there was a specific reason why God gave
he was
Joseph. Like,
compliant.
I don't know that answer. That's a good question. I mean, that's a really good question.
I don't know.
I don't know that
I mean,
answer.
I read the story many
Leave,
times.
he was compliant. Some of
Yeah.
the others kind of got
Oh,
a
that's
little into
true, too.
themselves.
I've just read it over and over, and I mean, I just don't understand why, it doesn't really say why Joseph at all.
Yeah, it doesn't. That's a good question. I might have to look into that. See there? I like that.
All right.
I like questions like that. I know you don't like questions like that because I don't have the answer, but I like questions like that because I don't have the answer.
Well, it makes me think. So I'm hoping I get my commentary this week. I'm looking for, or my concordance, and I did.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you very much.
Hey, go to this meal.
Tell him to speak English.
I don't
Yeah.
speak English.
Yeah, I know, right? And people watching online they're gonna think we a Spanish church.
You want Espanol?
Right.
No, there's too many rednecks.
Wait, too many. Yeah.
Yeah. Please me out of here. You said I'm a redneck too?
We all rednecks.
I've ordered
That's why we all get along so well.
I keep thinking, y'all, the church is just, everybody's just on the wrong side of the pond. Okay?
Maybe the river's just a little too far south.
Which river are you thinking about?
I like the Tennessee River.
I like the Lincoln River.
Tennessee River is not too far from me.
So where are we?
We're in
Where are we? Anybody remember where we ended? What was going on? Joseph's brothers just sold him to Egypt.
Whoa.
No, they
Never mind, I
sold
can't get on this
His
subject.
coat of many colors back to his dad with goat's blood on it.
Goat's
They
blood
sold
on
him
it.
to a bunch of what you call it, so they got him to Egypt.
That's right. That's right.
Sorry, that was wrong.
Oh, how about the memory verses from last week?
I tried to remember, but I can't.
I'm not really feeling the memory verses in this Bible reading series, just for the simple fact they're not memory verses, they're memory chapters. They're not they forgot that we're a church of rednecks. We can't remember an entire chapter.
No, I picture a verse about, one verse.
Yeah,
One
right.
verse,
They're-
not 2 or 3.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in fact, next week's verses are
3 verses
are
long.
like 3 verses, and I'm like, that is not a memory verse. That's a memory chapter. I mean, we can't handle it. Anyway, I think the reason that they picked them is because they go along with kind of the scripture and why those things were actually happening in the scripture. So last week's memory verses, or I'm going to change them to last week's description verses. So the first one was 2 Corinthians 10:12. It said, "For we dare not class ourselves or compare ourselves with those who commend themselves, but they, measuring themselves by themselves," whole lot of themselves, "and comparing themselves among themselves, are not wise."
We're talking about the brothers not being wise. Is that kind of what it's?
We dare not class our. What? Anybody got King James? Read the King
No, I
James.
don't. I have
Yeah,
the
we all
New
got
King James.
James.
I got the New King James.
Okay, find it. 2 Corinthians 10:12.
You can't talk about the brothers like that.
No?
2 Corinthians 10:12. You're a little slow.
Why you gotta call me slow?
I called him slow.
All right, 2 Corinthians 10:12.
Yes.
For we dare not class ourselves or compare ourselves with those who command themselves, but they measuring themselves by themselves and comparing themselves among themselves are not wise.
Say
All
that
right.
10 times fast.
I know, right? That's exactly the same as in the New King James. It's the exact same, word for word, actually. So we dare not class ourselves. What's he saying? Anybody got it? What? What's your fault?
I just realized it's the New King James.
Oh, you were reading the New King James.
Hang on, I have King James right here.
Okay, read it.
Hang on, let me get to it.
You said you had it right here.
Well, I have it on my phone. 2 Corinthians 10:12.
1 Corinthians 10:12.
2 Corinthians.
2 Corinthians, make up your mind, Helen.
I've got a commentary in my Bible.
Well, let's hear what it says in King James when he finds it back there.
For we dare not make ourselves of the number, or compare ourselves with some that command themselves, but they measuring themselves by themselves and comparing themselves among themselves are not wise.
It's kind of close. I mean, it means the same thing for sure. So what does your commentary say?
It says, Paul's critics commended themselves, measured themselves by their own personal opinions, and compared themselves with others. Contrast Paul's advice to esteem others above oneself.
So he's saying, don't think yourself too good to be, part of the group.
We're
Don't,
supposed to be humble.
supposed to be humble. And how does that follow along with our scriptures last week? Did the brothers maybe think that they were better than Joseph? Or maybe Joseph thought he was better than his brothers because they were going to bow down to him?
Joseph was saying that he was better than them.
Yeah,
Because, in my dream, you guys are bowing down to me,
right.
And
so I think that's why they choose the scriptures that they're choosing, because they're kind of going along. So Joseph was classing himself better than his brothers, or his brothers were saying, no, we're better than you. One or the other, but they were classing themselves, and it's saying you're not wise if you do that, because you might get sold into slavery. Right?
Book about Joseph,
Yeah.
and put it in man perspective as brothers that had a life together, and they had a dad that appreciated what the older brothers did. The youngest brother had no appreciation yet because he hadn't won his status over, and then he developed a dream that said that he would be over his other brothers, and so then he had a business where the brothers were under him, and he had to learn how to get to their perspective, more or less, but yet be humbled, not to be mean to his older brothers that had already been in that place. They kind of made it sound like that.
well, Joseph was loved more by their father than any of his other brothers.
Yeah.
Without doing anything.
Yeah, he didn't do nothing. He was just Joseph. Well, he was Rebekah's firstborn. That's why.
And he loved Rebekah.
And he loved Rebekah, right. Okay, and then the next verse was, he who believes in him is not condemned, but he who does not believe is condemned already, because he has not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. I think that verse is a memory verse for us. just for the simple fact of the truth that it powers behind it. Not necessarily, I don't even know how that falls into our scripture, but that's just a powerful verse that I think that that's one memory verse I think we should remember, okay? All right, so are we ready to get started on our scripture? Any questions on last week other than Tara's question that stumped me?
How does it make you feel that you can't make a phone call right now and get the answer?
I know, right? Phone a friend?
Oh my goodness.
You probably call your dad and ask your dad that question, and he probably will actually take an hour to explain it to you, because you go, well, this is this, and this is it.
Yeah.
Dad tried to Google it.
No, he wouldn't. He don't know what that word is. Anything?
So did you look into, because I noticed when I was listening online, I was watching TV last week when he was doing it, break the yoke. Did you look into that to see what that meant at all? Yeah, when he was talking, I think that was what it said, when you were saying something with the yoke. I thought it said break the yoke, and he was going to look into what that said or something.
To be honest with you, no, I didn't.
Okay.
No, I did not. I know what you're talking about now.
Okay.
Yeah.
The yoke, what I think it means is the weight on the shoulders.
Yes.
And the yoke is used for oxen from back in the day for pulling heavy loads.
Right. Yeah, he's going to break the yoke of your troubles. There was something else about that though that I ran into. I know what you're talking about. I just don't remember exactly what. But I've got it marked in my thing. I got to go back and look at it, but I just haven't had time. But we will. I will look into that. Those are things I'm doing. Monday we had a pastors meeting down. Oh, something I got to tell y'all too.
Okay.
Wow.
Squirrel.
I know, right? Squirrel.
Keep it secret.
No, Monday we had a pastors meeting down in town, and I kind of volunteered our church for the next one next month. Just letting you know.
On vacation that week.
So it's going to be like the middle of October. The pastors will come here and meet one Monday. I think the 16th is what it is. I don't even remember what it was. It's like the second Monday of October. We're going to meet here in the evening on Monday. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump into this. So I don't.
12th there, boss.
Huh?
12th is the second Monday of the
Okay, so the 12th
Also, just to throw that out there,
or the 19th.
they also used yokes on slaves.
Yes.
If you couldn't afford to feed a cow and that, you had a slave out there with the yoke grinding the meal and
Grinding the grain.
juice out of them, what you call it.
So what chapter are we in?
39.
39. 39.
Okay, I was one ahead of y'all.
That's okay. That's okay. We're in chapter 39. Genesis chapter 39. Genesis chapter 39. If while I'm reading, y'all it catches something that you want to share or want to talk about or want to ask a question, yell out, because I'm not going to be looking up at you. Get my attention. Say, hey, Tom, throw something at me.
I already have this week. I'm good.
There you go. All right. Genesis chapter 39. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he was a successful man. And he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all he did to prosper in his hand. So Joseph found favor in his sight and served him. Then he made him an overseer of his house and all that he had put under his authority. So it was from the time that he had made him overseer of his house and all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake, and the blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in the house and in the field. Thus he left all that he had in Joseph's hands, and he did not know what he had except for the bread which he ate. Joseph was pretty powerful in an Egyptian household, wasn't he? I mean, the Egyptian, right? He didn't even know what he had. I'll tell you what, Tracy and I are hoarders, and we don't know what we had. I'd like to have one of them Josephs. You go out in my barn, I have no idea what's in my barn. No, but Joseph, man, he was he had grown into a very powerful position here. It says, now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. He was a good-looking man. He's like Clay. He's a good-looking man. And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast longing eyes on Joseph. Better watch out, Clay. And she said, lie with me. But he refused and said to his master's wife, look, my master does not know what is with me in the house, and he has committed all that he has to my hand. There is no one greater in this house than I, nor has he kept back anything from me but you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? So it was, as she spoke to Joseph day by day, that he did not heed her to lie with her, to be with her. But it happened about this time when Joseph went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house was inside, that she caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me. But he left his garment in her hand and fled and ran outside. And so it was when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and fled outside, that she called to the men of her house and spoke to them, saying, see, he has brought into us this Hebrew to mock us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And it happened when he heard that I lifted my voice and cried out, that he left his garment with me and fled and went outside. So she kept his garment with her until his master came home. Then she spoke to him with words like these, saying, the Hebrew servant whom you brought to us came in to mock me. So it happened as I lifted my voice and cried that he left his garment with me and fled outside. So it was when his master heard the words which his wife spoke to him, saying, your servant did to me after this manner, that his anger was aroused. Then Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in the prison. That's a pretty big drop for Joseph. I mean, he was a powerful man in charge of everything, and all he had to do was stay out of trouble, and the wife got him in trouble. And now he's in prison. I don't know, if I was, what would you do if you was Potiphar? And your wife come and said, hey, Joseph has come to lie with me, but she was lying. You know, your house is one of the biggest houses on the block because Joseph is in charge. And your wife comes and says, Joseph's making a fool of me. He's making a fool of all of us. You know, I don't know. Anybody, what would you do the same thing?
Well, seeing as how if I was Potiphar and I'm trusting Joseph with everything in my house, I would confront him. I've trusted you with all this. Is my wife speaking the truth?
Right. That would have been a wise thing to do. A very wise thing to do. Because he turned down the blessings of God for his wife's word. And now, I'm not saying we should do that, but I mean, that we should not heed our wives, but still yet, this is a serious problem for Potiphar. And you're going to find out later, Potiphar's I'm going to ask you some more questions later as we get on down the story, because it gets kind of into a mess. And if I was Potiphar at the point that I'm getting ready to get to, I'd be a little shaking in my boots, right? All right, let's keep on going here. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy. And he gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. All the prisoners who were in the prison, whatever they did, it was his doing. The keeper of the prison did not look into anything that was under Joseph's authority, because the Lord was with him. And whatever he did, the Lord made to prosper. I think that one thing that we need to understand out of Joseph and about the time that he's facing here is he made the best out of his bad situation. He made the very best out of it. Wherever he was, he did his work. He did his job, no matter how bad it was. You know, if they said, hey, you know, you got to clean the toilets over in this prison, you know, he probably did it. And he probably didn't complain. I mean, that's how you get to be, you know, head of all the prison. You don't get there by going, no, I'm not going to do that, right? I mean, he's doing the best. He's doing whatever he can and going above and beyond. How many times do we, when we face things in our jobs or in our life, do we complain and moan and groan and put it off and just don't do it? Or we complain about it, you know? Keith, you get to work and boss tells you to do something you don't want to do, you know, I kind of grumble about it probably, right? We all do. Well, I really don't want to do that, right? I don't want to be the guy that has to go out there in the yard and pick up all the junk that they left behind, right? I mean, I don't want to be that guy. But Joseph was that guy. He could tell him, hey, go out and do this. And he did it, you know?
But it seems like all through this story that we start with him when he gets to Egypt, even with being put in the hole, that everything he's done has been really submissive to God, that he's done everything God's wanted him to do. Like he was in Potiphar's house and he made that, you know, he blessed that house. God blessed that house because of him. I guess because maybe Joseph was so submissive and did everything that he wanted him to do, maybe.
Right. And if we remember, way later on in Scripture, God tells us to be submissive to our governors and you remember that, right? You know, it might not be right, but you need to follow the laws of the land. You need to do whatever you're supposed, you know. And so I think that Joseph here is following God by following whatever it is that he's told to do, you know. And he's not grumbling about it. He's going above and beyond.
And you never hear him curse God about it.
No, never once. He goes, okay, I'll do whatever it is, you know. You know, it didn't say in here that when they threw him into prison that he complained and had a fit and I didn't do this, you know. Maybe he did, and it just doesn't tell us that, but it doesn't say that he did that. It just says that he threw him in prison and he made the best out of it. He's like, okay, I'm in prison. Let's see what I can, you know, I do whatever I can while I'm here, right? I think that's really important. That's a good lesson for all of us to learn, that we should be happy doing whatever it is, whether it's scrubbing the toilets or wiping the walls down or whatever it is that God wants us to do, you know. Pauletta was in here the other day and I snuck in on her and she's like, I'm in here scrubbing the toilets for Jesus. I mean, you can't, you know. You know, God sees that. And he blesses. He definitely blesses it, you know. Anytime that you do that, and people see that are around you, you know. Potiphar saw, you know, Joseph's following God and he's following whatever he's got to do, and he's not grumbling, and he's being blessed by it, and the people around us see that as well as we do things and we don't grumble and we go ahead and do it, and anyway, that's what I see out of this first portion of Joseph being in trouble. He didn't complain about it. He just went ahead and did it, you know. So chapter 40. Anybody got any questions, comments, thoughts, ideas, whatever? All right, chapter 40. It came to pass after these things that the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief butler and the chief baker. So he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the prison, the place where Joseph was confined. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them. So they were in custody for a while. Then the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined... Wait a minute. Hold on here a minute. So it says, so he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the prison, the place where Joseph was confined. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them. So they were in custody. He served them. Did you catch that? They were prisoners right along with him, and he'd been in the prison he's been in there a lot longer than they had been in there. But when they came in, they didn't serve him. It says he was in charge of all the prison. None of the prison did anything that Joseph didn't tell them to do, right? But yet when they got there, he served them. That's kind of a weird situation, ain't it? He did whatever it took, right? He did whatever he needed to do. He served the prisoners. He took care of them. He helped them. You know, that's what God wants us to do to the world, man. He wants us to serve, and we're supposed to be servants, right? Okay? All right. Verse 5, then the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, had a dream. Both of them, each man's dream in one night, and each man's dream with its own interpretation. And Joseph came into them in the morning and looked at them and saw that they were sad. So he asked Pharaoh's officers, who were with him in the custody of his Lord's house, saying, why do you look so sad today? And they said to him, we each have had a dream, and there is no interpreter of it. So Joseph said to them, do not interpretations belong to God? Tell them to me, please. Then the chief butler told his dream to Joseph and said to him, behold, in my dream a vine was before me, and in the vine were 3 branches. It was as though it budded, its blossoms shot forth, and its clusters brought forth ripe grapes. Then Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cups and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. Then Joseph said to him, this is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Now, within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your place. And you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand according to the former manner when you were his butler. In other words, butler has this dream, right? And he's like, and he sees this and he's like, I don't know. I don't understand what it means. What does it mean? Joseph says, look, in 3 days, you're going to be back at your job. So you're all good, right? You're going to be good here. But remember me, and Joseph says, but remember me when it is well with you, and please show kindness to me. Make mention of me to Pharaoh and get me out of this house. He did whatever he could. He worked and did whatever he could in the prison, right? But he didn't want to be there. And there's a whole lot of times, today being one of those, I did not want to be at work. I did not want to be at work. And I, sadly, was not like Joseph. I complained. I was having a bad day today. Okay? I know, the boss did not send me home. I tried.
No, if I had to be there, you had to be there.
I know, right? But is God going to bless that? No, because I was not very thankful that I was there. God gave me this job. He gave me the work. When I left work, what did I say? He was back there. He goes, I got all kinds of work. I can't come to. He was joking, of course. He's like, my boss said I need to get this work done. I said, your boss said there wouldn't be no work if it wasn't for God, and you're going to be at church.
That's why I was late, because I was finishing up that last cut.
Good deal. All right. Anyway, we need to be thankful in order to be blessed. And Joseph, he was angry. He really didn't want to be there, but he was thankful that he was not eaten by a wild lion or tiger or bear in a pit somewhere where his brothers wanted him to be eaten, right? He says, for indeed I was stolen away from the land of the Hebrews, and also I have done nothing here that they should put me into the dungeon. When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he said to Joseph, I also was in my dream, and there were 3 white baskets on my head. In the uppermost basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, and the birds ate them out of the basket on my head. So Joseph answered and said, this is the interpretation of it. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat your flesh from you. That is not one. I would not want to hear that one. I think I would have said, yeah, I'm thinking I'm going to get a second opinion on this tree. Right? Now it came to pass on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast for all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief butler and the chief baker among his servants. So he brought him up out of the prison, right? He says then he restored the chief butler to his butlership again, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief butler did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. The chief butler did not remember Joseph, but forgot him.
I mean, if you're going to tell me something good like that, and I get restored, I'm going to be like, yo, my boy Tom back here, you need to know about this.
You need to know about this guy, all right?
But it has to be in God's time.
It's got to be in God's time. It wasn't quite in God's time. That's true. That's it. But, man, Joseph's a little angry about this time. He's been waiting for a long time, right? Chapter 41. Then it came to pass at the end of 2 full years, 2 years, he had forgotten about Joseph, okay? That Pharaoh had a dream, and behold, he stood by the river. Suddenly, there came up out of the river 7 cows, fine looking and fat, and they fed in the meadow. Then behold, 7 other cows came up after them out of the river, ugly and gaunt, and stood by the other cows on the bank of the river. And the ugly and gaunt cows ate up the 7 fine looking and fat cows. So Pharaoh awoke. He slept and dreamed a second time, and suddenly 7 heads of grain came up on one stalk, plump and good. Then behold, 7 thin heads, blighted by the east wind, sprang up after them. And the 7 thin heads devoured the 7 plump and full heads. So Pharaoh awoke, and indeed it was a dream. I'm pretty sure everybody here already knows what the 7 heads and the 7 cows all mean, right?
I didn't until I actually read it.
Good. I'm glad you read it and found out. Amen. So, what's it mean? Somebody speak up.
7 years of growth, basically, and 7 years of famine.
You got it. 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine. Now it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. And Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was no one who could interpret them for Pharaoh. Then the chief butler spoke to Pharaoh, saying, I remember my faults this day. Imagine that, right? When Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, both me and the chief baker, we each had a dream in one night, he and I. Each of us dreamed according to the interpretation of his own dream. Now there was a young Hebrew man with us there, a servant of the captain of the guard, and we told him, and he interpreted our dreams for us. To each man he interpreted according to his own dream, and it came to pass, just as he interpreted for us, so it happened. He restored me to my office, and he hanged him. Then Pharaoh sent and called, I bet you Pharaoh's going, you know what, I remember that. I did hang that old butler or that old baker, didn't I? He's like, I didn't, how do you know that, right? He's probably wondering to himself, how in the world does this guy know that? Anyway. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him quickly out of the dungeon. And he shaved, changed his clothing, and came to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, but there is no one who can interpret it. But I have heard it said of you that you can understand a dream to interpret it. So Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, it is not in me. If I was Joseph, good thing I'm not. If I was Joseph, I probably would have said, why don't you ask the the butler over there to interpret it, because he should have told you about me 2 years ago. I know, Bill, but I said if it was me, good thing it wasn't me, right? I know, I wouldn't have shaved. Anyway, my mom asked me to shave every time she talks to me. Would you please shave your face? I said no.
You just trim it up, right?
No. I tell her I'm trying to look as much like Jesus as I possibly can, and she said, "You've got a long way to go, boy."
You can get a haircut.
No, right?
That's right, stiff picture haircut.
I know. I can't handle that. It's got to be short. It used to be long. It used to be way down here. Okay. Yes, I do have pictures. I have had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it, but I have heard it said of you that you can understand a dream to interpret it. So Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, "It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace." He says, I am not the one to give credit here. It's not me. It's all God. It's all God. Okay. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Behold, in my dream, I stood on the bank of the river. Suddenly 7 cows came up out of the river, fine looking and fat, and they fed in the meadow. Then behold, 7 other cows came up after them, poor and very ugly and gaunt, such ugliness as I have never seen in all the land of Egypt. And the gaunt and ugly cows ate up the first 7, the fat cows. When they had eaten them up, no one would have even known that they had eaten them, for they were just as ugly as at the beginning. So I awoke. And I saw in my dream, and suddenly 7 heads came up on one stalk, full and good. Then behold, 7 heads, withered, thin, and blighted by the east wind, sprang up after them, and the thin heads devoured the 7 good heads. So I told this to all the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, the dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads are 7 years. The dreams are one. And the 7 thin and ugly cows which came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty heads blighted by the east wind are 7 years of famine. This is the thing which I have spoken to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. Indeed, 7 years of great plenty will come throughout all the land of Egypt. But after them, 7 years of famine will arise, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine will deplete the land. So the plenty will not be known in the land because of the famine following, for it will be very severe. You know when you say, man, remember back in the day and it was just great and we had all we could ever want, right? Well, it ain't going to be like that. They're not even going to, it's going to be so bad that people are going to be going, I don't even remember when it was good. I don't even remember when God was good. I don't remember. And this is only going to be within a 7-year period. People are going to forget how good things were, Now, therefore, let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land to collect 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt in the 7 plentiful years. And let them gather all the food of those good years that are coming, and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. Then that food shall be as a reservoir for the land, for the 7 years of famine which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land may not perish during the famine. Joseph didn't stand up there and go, hey, you know what? We need to make sure you put me in charge so I can take care of this problem for you. Because I'm smart enough. I knew what was going on. Get me out of that prison, man. Let me out of there, right? He didn't say that. He didn't say, let me out of the prison. He didn't say, I'll help you out, Pharaoh. I know exactly what's going to happen. He told Pharaoh what was going to happen, and he said, you need to find somebody that you trust. You seriously need to find somebody that you trust to help you with this problem that you're getting ready to have. Because in 7 years of good, people aren't going to be preparing. They're not going to be taking care of themselves. They're not going to be helping they're going to be helping themselves, right? They're not going to be helping others. When you got plenty, you're like, I got all I can need, right? I'll tell you, when I was in my former life, okay, Tracy and I, more me than Tracy. Tracy was more of a, you need to stop spending the money. And I was more of a, you know what?
I need that.
It's always going to be there. I'm never going to run out. The money's always going to be there. This job will supply me forever. I'll be okay. This job is never going anywhere. And God said, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. I'm getting ready to take it away from you. Okay? He's like, I'm getting ready to take you, you're getting ready to walk away from it, and it's going to be a famine. And it has been in times. It has been quite a famine at times. God is blessing me right now, and I give all the glory to God for that. Okay? But there are a lot of times it's and famines can come in different variations and different ways and different things. I mean, right now, I personally am in a famine of rest. Much needed rest.
It's your fault for getting a baby at the house.
It's not just that. I am in a famine of needing a break. But you know what? I'm not complaining. Okay, I'm just stating facts here tonight. I'm stating facts. I'm not complaining. Okay. Anyway, there's a lot of different ways of famine. You know, our families could be in famine. You know, our relationships between our wives could be in a famine. You know, our relationships with our friends can be in a famine. Our money could be in a famine. You know, there's a lot of different famines that we could have to deal with. And a lot of times when we're feeling good about things, we ain't storing up for the time that we know a famine is coming. You know, there's a famine coming.
I'm going through one right now, you know that.
You know, yeah, you're going through a famine, man.
God told me to, hey, this is what you're doing now. So,
Amen. I'm kind of glad he did, because that helps me in a part of the famine I've been dealing with. But anyway, I mean, you know, Joseph didn't take credit for this. He gave all the glory to God. And then he stood back and he said, you need to find somebody that you trust. And I fully believe that as Joseph is doing this, that he's standing there thinking that he's headed back to the prison cell. He's not planning on being the king, the second in command of Egypt at this point. I'm sure he's standing there going, you know what? As soon as I get done with this, he's probably sending me back to the prison, because that's where I've been, right? So anyway, he tells Pharaoh this, and let's see how this goes. Verse 37, so the advice was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find such a one as this? Pharaoh was blown away. He didn't ask Pharaoh for anything. He just told him what it was, and he's ready to go back to prison. He's like, can we find anyone such as this, a man in whom is the Spirit of God? He could tell that God was a part of him just by the few minutes that he spent with him, right? He could see God as part of. Can people see God in you? You know, do people see God when they see you, when you talk to you? Are all we ever out for is for ourselves? You know, sometimes I'm that way. I can be selfish. That's great. You know, I mean, it is good when we can all try not to be, but we're human, man. We fall on our faces. And sometimes we do things for people because we want something in return. It's serious. I mean, that's kind of the way we think sometimes. But here he's like, he sees God in Joseph, because Joseph's not asking Pharaoh for anything. This is his, how many times, you know, has Joseph been in the prison and he goes, man, get me a, you know, in front of Pharaoh, I will pour my heart out and I'll give him the case and tell him I don't belong here. That's not what he did it? It's not what he did. Okay. Verse 39, then Pharaoh said to Joseph, inasmuch as God has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. Talk about standing high, right? Joseph, I've only met you for 5 seconds. And I can already tell that there is nobody in the entire land of Egypt as wise as you. You are one smart cookie. You know? You shall be over my house, and all my people shall be ruled according to your word. Only in regard to the throne will I be greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took his signet ring off his hand and put it on Joseph's hand. And he clothed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. And he had him ride in the second chariot which he had. And they cried out before him, bow the knee. So he set him over all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh also said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without your consent, no man may lift his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath-Paneah, and he gave him as wife Asitha, the daughter of Potphera, priest of On. Now, if I was Potiphar about this time, and if I was Potiphar's wife about this time, Potiphar's wife lied about Joseph. Potiphar had him thrown in prison. A lot more than 2 years. He'd been there for a long time. And now Joseph is over them. Again, good thing I wasn't Joseph. Because I've got a little bit of a revengeful spitefulness in me. I know I shouldn't, but I do. I'm honest with you. I'm as honest as the day is long. I may be too honest. I know, right? But I'm pretty revengeful sometimes. And if I was Potiphar, or if I was Potiphar's wife, I'd be a little shaken to know that he's now not only free, but he's in charge. He's the second in command of all Egypt. He could literally walk over to Potiphar and say, take his head off. And they would do it. They would do it. Without one question, they would have took his head off. Right there. Bam. Done. Over. He could have done that. But he didn't. He was walking with God. Right? He was walking with God. So Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. Now in the 7 plentiful years, the ground brought forth abundantly. So he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities. He laid up in every city the food of the fields which surrounded them. Joseph gathered very much grain as the sand of the sea until he stopped counting, for it was immeasurable. And to Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potipherah, priest of On, bore to him. Joseph called the name of the firstborn, what? Manasseh. For God has made me forget all the toil of my father's house. And the name of the secondborn he called Ephraim. For God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. Then the 7 years of plenty which were in the land of Egypt ended, and the 7 years of famine began to come, as Joseph had said. And the reason I'm pointing this out is there is no tribe of Joseph. There's the 12 tribes of Israel, right? But there is no tribe of Joseph, and Joseph was one of the original 12, okay? So it's really important you remember those names. What were the 2 names? Ephraim? What is it? Manasseh. Manasseh and Ephraim. Manasseh and Ephraim. Remember those names, okay? And like I said, the reason I'm saying this is there is no tribe of Joseph. Okay? It says, and the 7 years of famine began to come, as Joseph had said. The famine was in all the lands, but in the land of Egypt there was bread. So when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. Then Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, go to Joseph. Whatever he says to you, do. The famine was over all the face of the earth, and Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians. And the famine became severe in the land of Egypt. So the countries came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain, because the famine was severe in all the lands. When Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt, who's Jacob? Joseph's daddy, right? Jacob said to his sons, there were 11 left, right? 11 sons left. Jacob said to his sons, what sons were these? Could it have been the sons that threw Joseph in a pit and sold him to the ones traveling through to take down to Egypt? You don't say. This right here, we're getting close to the part where if you were watching a mini-series, it would be about wait until next week for the conclusion, right? And he said, indeed, I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down to that place and buy for us there, that we may live and not die. So Joseph's 10 brothers went down to buy. Wait a minute, didn't I say there was 11 brothers left? Bam! Got it! So Joseph's 10 brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt, but Joseph did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he said, lest some calamity befall him. I mean, Benjamin was the only other brother from Rachel, right? And he didn't want to lose that. He was holding on to Rachel through Benjamin, right? He's holding on to Rachel through Benjamin. And the sons of Israel went to buy grain among those who journeyed, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Now Joseph, does it say that the brothers went to Egypt by themselves? Did they pack up? Did Jacob say, go to Egypt and buy some grain? And you see the 11 brothers as they wander off through the 10 brothers as they wander off through the desert? But Jacob did not send. See, okay, verse 5. And the sons of Israel went to buy grain among those who journeyed. There was a group of people that went.
Join the caravan.
Join the caravan. That's what I was getting at. There was a caravan headed to buy some grain. And the brothers just kind of joined in with the caravan on their way down to buy some grain. Another day in the life of going to get some food for the family, right? They were just on their way. They joined in with the caravan. They're headed down. I'm sure they sang and danced and partied at night and was going down. You know, they were having a good time as they were headed down to get some grain. They were going down, get some good grain, bring it back for the family. Everything was going to be okay, right? Now, Joseph was governor over the land, and it was he who sold to all the people of the land. That's important to understand. He was the one. He didn't give that job to anybody else. You wanted to buy some grain. Guess who you were going to talk to? You had to come to Joseph. You got it. You were going to come see Joseph. All right. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the earth. What kind of dream is this? You mean to tell me that we're going to bow down to you? No, that ain't going to happen. What's that? Exactly, I know. They had no idea who he was. But here they were, bowing down to Joseph, right? Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them. Here they are, 10 brothers. He knew that there was one missing. He's like, these are my brothers. and they're bowing down to me. Imagine that. Wonder what happened there. I know, right? Where have I seen that before?
He didn't recognize them. They didn't recognize him.
Well, he was a kid.
When they sold him, he was 17.
He was a kid.
And when this happened, he was 30.
Yep.
But he was also,
And he had Egyptian makeup on, and he was taller. and you got to remember, he was the guy in charge of bread. You don't want to put a fat guy in charge of bread. He probably weighed a few extra pounds. But anyway, he was done up as an Egyptian. So he had Egyptian, the necklaces, the things you would probably see if you watch one of those movies with the thing on their head or hair and all that, So he looked like an Egyptian, right? He says, but he acted as a stranger to them and spoke roughly to them. Then he said to them, where do you come from? And they said, from the land of Canaan to buy food. So Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. Then Joseph remembered the dreams which he had dreamed about them. What did I dream? What was that now? Right? And he said to them, you are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land. And they said to him, no, my Lord, but your servants have come to buy food. We are all one man's sons. We are honest men. Okay, I'm Joseph. I'm Joseph, right? I'm standing in front of these men that are bowed down before me. And I go, you're a spy. And they go, no, we're not. We're honest men. We're good people. We're honest. It had to take everything Joseph had not to whack him upside the head with something. These are the same boys that sold you, right? And left you for dead. We're good. Hey, we're good, right? Okay. Your servants are not spies. But he said to them, no, but you have come to see the nakedness of the land. And they said, your servants are 12 brothers. What? And the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And in fact, the youngest is with our father today, and one is no more. They left him for dead, right? They left him for dead. One is no more. They sold him, but right here he just said one is no more. He didn't say, but one is in the land somewhere we don't know where he is. He said one is no more. In other words, they figured he was dead. They figured, he's gone. He's nowhere around, right? But Joseph said to them, it is as I spoke to you, saying, you are spies. In this manner you shall be tested. By the life of Pharaoh you shall not leave this place, unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you and let him bring your brother, and you shall be kept in prison, that your words may be tested to see whether there is any truth in you. Or else by the life of Pharaoh surely you are spies. So he put them all together in prison for 3 days. Then Joseph said to them the third day, do this and live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers be confined to your prison house. But you, go and carry grain for the famine of your houses, and bring your youngest brother to me. So your words will be verified, and you shall not die. And they did so. Why do you think he did that? Why do you think he told them at first, all y'all go to prison, and one of you go get the brother. And then after 3 days, he's like, okay, look, I fear God. Okay? So how about this? Just one of you stay in prison, and all the rest of you take some grain back. Why do you think he might have done that?
Maybe he was afraid his dad wouldn't send Benjamin back with the one brother because he was Rachel's.
That could be, yeah. That could be. You were getting ready to say something.
Because he wanted to see his brother, but he wanted all of them to be there.
That's very true. That is part of it, yeah. I think that, and this is me, okay? This is my commentary. I personally think that he said, look, I'm going to put you all in prison. We're going to let, one of you go. And for one, they couldn't decide who was going to be the one to go, right? If all of them are there, right? I'm going to go back. No, you ain't. You're going to leave us here, right? Well, how about me? I'll go. I can be trusted. No, you can't. You are not going to be the one that saves my life, right? And so they basically refused to do that. 3 days have passed. I bet you every day Joseph sent somebody down there to the prison to see who's going to go, right? You go down there and find out who's going to go get the younger brother, not my brother, but the younger brother. And it never did happen for 3 days. And I could picture, okay, I can kind of see Joseph thinking the famine is bad. Dad, I know my dad's back there. He sent the kids to get some food, right? And so Dad's at home and he's starting to get hungry. Maybe the cattle are getting ready to die. Maybe something's happening, I really need to go ahead and stop this. It's been 3 days now. We can't decide on who's going to go, so I'm going to do it for him. I personally think that's how it went. I may be wrong, but that's how I see it.
I agree with you. I can see, Joseph sending someone down there going, go find out which one of my brothers has decided to go, and the guy coming back going, you know what, Joseph? Like, they're all just...
They're a mess down there. Right? That's kind of how I see it, along with what both of you said. Those are very important, and we're going to find that out. But I'm thinking more short term as to why he's doing this, and I can kind of see that going on. Okay, so then Joseph said to them the third day, do this and live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers be confined to your prison house, but you go and carry grain for the famine of your house, and bring the youngest brother to me, so your words will be verified, and you shall not die. And they did so. Then they said to one another, we are truly guilty concerning our brother, for we saw the anguish of his soul when he pleaded with us, and we would not hear. Therefore, this distress has come upon us. And Reuben answered them, saying, did I not speak to you, saying, do not sin against the boy? And you would not listen? Therefore, behold, his blood is now required of us. But they did not know that Joseph understood them. Remember Reuben, he was like, we are not kill Joseph, right? Let's just put him in the pit. And then he was planning on going and getting him, pulling him up out of the pit and taking him back and getting brownie points with Dad. And when he came back, they had sold him, right? And here he is, Reuben. He's like, didn't I tell you this would happen, right? Pauletta says that a lot to you, don't she, Gary? Didn't I tell you this would happen if you did that? Right? Okay. But they did not know that Joseph understood them, for he spoke to them through an interpreter, and he turned himself away from them and wept. Then he returned to them again and talked with them, and he took Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes. This again goes back to what I said. They couldn't decide who it was going to be, and so he did, right? It just said, and he took Simeon. No, Simeon didn't go, hey, I'll be the one that stays behind, right? No, Joseph took him. He had to make up their mind for him, right? Now, imagine yourself as Joseph. Your brother sold you, and that's the last you know of your family. The last you've heard of them. The last thing you even picture of your family. Is Dad coming to find me? Is he ever going to come? What does Dad think happened to me? What's going on back home? I'm sure as things went through his mind, what does Dad think? I was Dad's favorite. Wonder if he's worried about me. How do I get word to Dad that I'm actually okay? You got to remember, this is the very first time that Joseph hears what happened after they sold him. The very first time. So it's a pretty touching moment. He hears his brother say, here's one of his brothers, right, say, didn't I tell you guys not to do this?
I'm surprised he didn't hold Reuben back.
Right? He may have, I may have to find out more information because Reuben's talking, right? Reuben's the talker. He's like, hey, guys, I told you. I would have thought maybe that might have been, in fact, I've thought that before.
Because, then Joseph could have been like, hey, bro, it's me.
I know.
This is what I'm planning on doing. You got to keep your mouth shut.
Right. Could have been that way, but it wasn't because it wasn't in God's time. But, when we read these stories, it's good to think about different scenarios and wonder how things might have went or why they might have went the way they did. But anyway, he took Simeon, okay? All right. Where were we? I lost it.
Verse 25.
Verse 25. Oh, there we are. Okay. Then Joseph gave a command to fill their sacks with grain, to restore every man's money into his sack, and to give them provisions for the journey. Thus he did for them. So he loaded their donkeys with the grain and departed from there. But as one of them opened his sack to give his donkey feed at an encampment, he saw his money, and there it was in the mouth of his sack. So he said to his brothers, my money has been restored, and there it is in my sack. Then their hearts failed them, and they were afraid, saying to one another, what is this that God has done to us? Then they went to Jacob, their father, in the land of Canaan, and told him all that had happened to them, saying, the man who is Lord of the land spoke roughly to us. He was mean to me. Right? They were mean to me up there in Egypt. They went to Jacob, their father, in the land of Canaan, and told them all that had happened to them, saying, the man who is Lord of the land spoke roughly to us and took us for spies of the country. But we said to him, we are honest men, and we are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our fathers, and one is no more. And the youngest is with our father this day in the land of Canaan. Then the man, the Lord of the country, said to us, by this I will know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers here with me. Take food for the famine of your household and be gone. And bring your youngest brother to me, so I shall know that you are not spies, but that you are honest men. I will grant your brother to you, and you may trade in the land. Then it happened, as they emptied their sacks, that surprisingly, each man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. And Jacob, their father, said to them, you have bereaved me. Joseph is no more. Simeon is no more. And you want to take Benjamin? All these things are against me. Then Reuben spoke to his father, saying, kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you. But he said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone. If any calamity should befall him along the way in which you go, then you would bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the grave. He was pretty serious. He's not sending his last boy, right? This is his last attachment to the wife that he loved. He's like, we are not sending him down there.
Not only to his wife, but also his dead son.
His favorite dead son, right? This is his last attachment. He's like, you're not going to do it. I am not going to let that go, right? Now the famine was severe in the land, and it came to pass, when they had eaten up the grain which they had brought from Egypt, that their father said to them, go back, buy us a little food. But Judah spoke to him, saying, the man solemnly warned us, saying, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you send our brother with us, we will go down and buy food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. In other words, if I ain't going, right? He told us that if we don't bring Benjamin, we ain't going to see him. That means I ain't getting food. That'd be a wasted trip. And we'll probably end up back in prison again. I ain't going, right? And Israel said, why did you deal so wrongfully with me as to tell the man whether you still had another brother? But they said, the man asked us pointedly about ourselves and our family, saying, is your father still alive? Have you another brother? And we told him according to these words. Could we possibly have known that he would say, bring your brother down? Did Joseph ask him about dad or about the brother? He didn't ask him about that. He just said, where'd you come from? He didn't say anything about, is your father still alive? Have you another brother? They're lying to dad right here. They're trying to save their own tail, right? Then Judah said to Israel his father, send the lad with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and you, and also our little ones. I myself will be surety for him. For my hand you shall require him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. For if we had not lingered, surely by now we would have returned this second time. And their father Israel said to them, if it must be so, then do this. Take some of the best fruits of the land in your vessels. Carry down a present for the man, a little balm and a little honey, spices and myrrh, pistachio nuts and almonds. Take double money in your hand, and take back in your hand the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. Take your brother also, and rise and go back to the man, and may God Almighty give you mercy before the man, that he may release your other brother and Benjamin. If I am bereaved, I am bereaved. Why didn't he let Reuben do it? Anybody remember? When Reuben said, take my sons, and if I don't return, kill them. Why didn't he let Reuben? Why didn't he agree to Reuben doing this? Reuben was the one he was angry with. He's been mad at Reuben for a long time because Reuben slept with his wife. Remember? It's the same thing back then. They're not married, but it's his wife. But it was actually the maid, okay? But he slept with the woman that belonged to his father, and he was like, I don't trust you, right? I don't trust you. I think that's why he didn't let Reuben do it. So the men took that present and Benjamin, and they took double the money in their hand and rose and went down to Egypt, and they stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, take these men to my home and slaughter an animal and make ready, for these men will dine with me at noon. Then the man did as Joseph ordered, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house. Now the men were afraid. Joseph's standing up there and he's dealing out grain to everybody, and you're all standing in line, and you get up there and you get up to the next one, right? And they're all going, okay, we got the brother, we'll be okay. Next. We got Benjamin with us, we're okay. We got presents, we got money, we're all good, right? We're coming to get our brother. Next. And the guard comes up and taps you on the shoulder. Hey, you guys need to go. Come with me. Well, a little terrifying there for a minute, right? You guys need to come with me. And he takes them to Joseph's house. He says, y'all wait here for a little bit. It'll be a little while. Joseph's got some work to do, but he'll be with you in a little while, right? Now the men were afraid because they were brought into Joseph's house. And they said, it is because of the money which was returned in our sacks the first time that we brought in, so that he may make a case against us and seize us and take us as slaves with our donkeys. Uh-oh, they all going back to jail, right? When they drew near to the steward of Joseph's house, they talked with him at the door of the house and said, man, we are so sorry. I did not know the money was in the sack, right? Please forgive. We didn't know about the money. We didn't know anything. What? Help me, please. I didn't mean, right? Oh, sir, we indeed came down the first time to buy food, but it happened when we came to the encampment that we opened our sacks, and there each man's money was in the mouth of his sack, our money in full weight. So we have brought it back in our hand, and we have brought down other money in our hands to buy food. We do not know who put the money in our sacks. It wasn't us. We didn't steal it. I promise. We paid for it, but I don't know how it got there. I don't know how many times I've said, babe, I have no idea how it got there. And she says, you put it there. But he said, peace be with you. The guards got to be laughing a little bit inside. Here they are confessing everything they could possibly confess. And he's standing there and he goes, you know what? Y'all okay? It's all right. You might want to shut up now because you might confess something that you can't take back. All right? So the man brought, peace be with you. Do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has given you treasure in your sacks. I had your money. They were confessing to the very man who put the money in the sack in the first place. He's the one that put all the money back in their bags, right? He says, I had your money. Then he brought Simeon out to them. So the man brought the men into Joseph's house and gave them water, and they washed their feet, and he gave their donkeys feed. Then they made the presents ready for Joseph's coming at noon, for they heard that they would eat bread there. And when Joseph came home, they brought him a present which was in their hand into the house, and bowed down before him to the earth. Then he asked them about their well-being and said, is your father well, the old man of whom you spoke? Is he still alive? And they answered, your servant, our father, is in good health. He is still alive. And they bowed their heads down and prostrated themselves. Then he lifted his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, is this your younger brother of whom you spoke to me? And he said, God be gracious to you, my son. Now his heart yearned for his brother. Man, he hadn't seen his brother since they were little tiny fellas, right? I mean, his brother was probably just a little tiny kid, okay? God be gracious to you, my son. His heart yearned for his brother. So Joseph made haste and sought somewhere to weep. He began to cry. And he had to run off and hide, right? He couldn't let him see it. And he went into his chamber and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out, and he restrained himself, and he said, serve the bread. So they set him a place by himself, and them by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat food with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. And they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his birthright. And the men looked in astonishment at one another. Then he took servings to them from before him, but Benjamin's serving was 5 times as much as the others. So they drank and were merry with him. They were having a good time. But they all looked over at Benjamin, and he had a plate full of ribeyes like this. And they had a couple little pieces of bread and a hamburger, right? And they're like, what in the world's going on with this one, right? And he commanded the steward of his house, saying, fill the men's sack with food, as much as they can carry, and put each man's money in the mouth of his sack. Here they go again, right? Also, put my cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest, and his grain money. So he did according to the word that Joseph had spoken. As soon as the morning dawned, the men were sent away, they and their donkeys. When they had gone out of the city and were not yet far off, Joseph said to his steward, get up, follow the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, why have you repaid evil for good? Is this not the one from which my Lord drinks and with which he indeed practices divination? You have done evil in so doing. So he overtook them and spoke to them these same words, and they said to him, why does my Lord say these words? Far be it from us that your servants should do such a thing. Look, we brought back to you from the land of Canaan the money which we had found in the mouth of our sacks. How then could we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? With whomever of your servant is found, let him die. We ain't got your cup. After the first time, I think I wouldn't have said that. This is the second time that they're traveling around with something they probably shouldn't have had, right? And we also will be my Lord's slaves. And he said, now, let it let it be according to your words. He with whom it is found shall be my slave, and you shall be blameless. Then each man speedily let down his sack to the ground, and each opened his sack. So he searched. He began with the oldest and left off with the youngest. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack, right? The cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they tore their clothes, and each man loaded his donkey and returned to the city. Like, oh, man, Benjamin, what in the world have you done to us? Now we got to go back and face this rough man again, right?
That sounds about right.
Right? There you go. Your boy stole the cup. So Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house. Here we are again. And he was still there. And they fell before him on the ground. And Joseph said to them, "What deed is this you have done? Did you not know that such a man as I can certainly practice divination?" Then Judah said, "What shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak? Or how shall we clear ourselves? God has found out the iniquity of your servants. Here we are, my Lord's slaves, both we and he also with whom the cup was found." But he said, "Far be it from me that I should do so. The man in whose hand the cup was found, he shall be my slave. For as for you, go up in peace to your father." So Judah gets up and he goes, "Look, I'm so sorry this happened to us. My brother is a knucklehead. Look, you know what? We're all going to be your slaves. We're all guilty. We'll all be your slaves." Judah told his dad that I'd take care of the boy, right? Judah's thinking about this time. If I got to go back without Benjamin, I don't want to go back. So he's like, you know what? We're all your slaves, okay? And Joseph goes, "Nope, I'm going to keep that one. That one right there. I'm going to keep Benjamin." Verse 18, Then Judah came near to him and said, "Oh, my Lord, please let your servant speak a word in my Lord's hearing. And do not let your anger burn against your servant, for you are even like Pharaoh. My Lord asked his servants, saying, 'Have you a father or brother?' And we said to my Lord, 'We have a father, an old man, and a child of his old age who is young. His brother is dead, and he is alone. He alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, Bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes on him. And we said to my Lord, The lad cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. But you said to your servants, Unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall see my face no more. So it was when we went up to your servant, my father, that we told him the words of my Lord. And our father said, Go back and buy us a little food. But we said, We cannot go down. If our youngest brother is not with us, then we will go down. For we may not see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. Then your servant, my father, said to us, You know that my wife bore me 2 sons, and one went out from me, and I said, Surely he is torn to pieces, but I have not seen him since. But if you take this one also from me, and calamity befalls him, you shall bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the grave." Joseph is going, "My dad thinks I'm dead. That's why he didn't come looking for me." He's getting another piece of the puzzle of his life that he's not been part of. He's finding out Dad thinks I'm dead, and he's been sad all these years, right? "Now, therefore, when I come to your servant, my father, and the lad is not with us, since his life is bound up in the lad's life, it will happen when he sees that the lad is not with us, that he will die. So your servant will bring down the gray hair of your servant, our father, with sorrow to the grave. For your servant became surety for the lad to my father, saying, If I do not bring him back to you, then I shall bear the blame before my father forever. Now, therefore, please let your servant remain instead of the lad as a slave to my Lord, and let the lad go up with his brothers. For how shall I go up to my father if the lad is not with me? Lest perhaps I see the evil that would come upon my father." Joseph, for the very first time, is getting a picture of his life without him, his family that's back home. He can't hold it back any longer. He's like, "My dad loves me, That's why he didn't come looking for me because he thought I was dead. And he's like, man, my brothers are, man, they're owning up to their mistakes, man. They're understanding what's going on. And I've got one of my brothers that's saying, take me instead of him. He's about to break down, right? Then Joseph could not restrain himself before all those who stood by him. He cried out, make everyone go out from me. So no one stood with him while Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians in the house of Pharaoh heard it. Joseph was so overtaken that his father didn't give up on him, that his father loved him, that he just began bawling, and he's crying out so loud that the entire house of Pharaoh hears it. Big baby. He was so overtaken with happiness. It wasn't a baby. He cried like a baby, but he was happy, right? Then Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph! Does my father still live? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were in dismay in his presence. You're who? Who are you?
Well, it had to be a big shock when he started speaking in their own tongue to them.
You got it. Because he spoke to them in an interpreter before.
Yeah.
And here he's like, send everybody away! And they're going, whoa, wait a minute. What did he just spoke in our language, right? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. And Joseph said to his brothers, please come near to me. So they came near. Then he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. But now, do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years, the famine has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. And God sent me before you to preserve the posterity for you in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh and the Lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me. Do not tarry. You shall... Whoa. Back up. I just saw something. Did y'all see it? Anybody see it? Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me. Do not tarry. Why would they tarry? They just found out Joseph's alive. Why would they tarry?
Because they're afraid of what their dad's going to say.
Because they just found out that Joseph's alive. They got to go home and tell Daddy what they did. They got to...
Give Dad the money they got.
I know, right? They didn't even share their money. They got to go home and tell Daddy, hey, Dad, we sold your boy. And now he's the king of... He's the second in command of all of Egypt. Talk about Dad being mad. That's why they would... That's why he said, do not tarry. Go straight home and get my dad. Right? You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near to me, you and your children, your children's children, your flocks and your herds, and all that you have. There I will provide for you, lest you and your household and all that you have come to poverty. For there are still 5 years of famine, and behold, your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see that it is my mouth that speaks with you. So you shall tell my father of all my glory in Egypt and of all that you have seen, and you shall hurry and bring my father down here. Then he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. Moreover, he kissed all his brothers and wept over them, and after that his brothers talked with him. Now the report of it was heard in Pharaoh's house, saying, Joseph's brothers have come. So it pleased Pharaoh and his servants well. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this. Load your animals and depart. Go to the land of Canaan. Bring your father and your households and come to me. I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you will eat the fat of the land. Now you are commanded to do this. Take carts out of the land of Egypt for your little ones and your wives. Bring your father and come. Also, do not be concerned about your goods, for the best of the land of Egypt is yours. He says, I want you to go home. I want you to get dad and wives and brothers and kids and whatever you got. Don't take your tent down. Leave that. Don't take anything. Leave all your possessions. You go get the people and bring them to Egypt. Because I'm going to give you everything you're going to need.
Not everything. I'm going to give you the best of the best.
The best of everything that you need. You got it. I'm going to give you the best.
Because your family of Joseph's. Joseph took care of my land.
I'm going to take care.
Everything. I'm giving you.
I'm going to take care of your family. Yeah, I'm going to take care of your family. And he sent to his father these things, 10 donkeys loaded with the good things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, bread, food for his father for the journey. So he sent his brothers away, and they departed. He said to them, see that you do not become troubled along the way. Again, he's telling him, don't be troubled. Don't be afraid that you got to tell Dad I'm alive. Just go do it. Okay, just go do it. Then they went up out of Egypt, and they came to the land of Canaan to Jacob their father. I'll tell you, that had to be one of the longest donkey rides I've ever seen. Hey, Reuben, are you going to be the one that tells Dad?
I'm not telling you so.
Yeah, okay. Hey, you. Are you going to be the one that tells Dad? No, I'm not telling him. Right? It's got to be a long ride back home, okay?
Epic round of rock, paper, scissors.
Right. Right. Oh, man. Then they went up out of Egypt and came to the land of Canaan to Jacob their father, and they told him, saying, Joseph is still alive, and he is governor over all the land of Egypt. Really? Joseph? No, don't stop me, Dad. Right? Don't give any breaks for Dad to ask any questions. Just keep talking, right? Joseph is still alive, and he's governor over all the land of Egypt, and Jacob's heart stood still because he did not believe them. But when they told him all the words which Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the carts which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob their father revived. Then Israel said, it is enough. Joseph, my son, is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. So Israel took his journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. Then God spoke to Israel in the vision of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, here I am. So he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not fear to go down to Egypt, for I will make of you a great nation there. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also surely bring you up again. And Joseph will put his hand on your eyes. Then Jacob arose from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob, their little ones and their wives, in the carts which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. So they took their livestock and their goods which they had acquired in the land of Canaan and went to Egypt, Jacob and all his descendants with him. His sons and his sons' sons, his daughters and his sons' daughters, and all his descendants he brought with him to Egypt. What do you think he did here just before he took off? What did he do? Just before he went to Egypt, what did he do? It just tells us here. What did he do? He built an altar and he prayed. Lord, I know there's a famine in the land. There was a famine once before, and you told me not to go to Egypt. Lord, my son's in Egypt. He's second in command, right? Only to Pharaoh. They've got food. They can They can supply for our family. We won't have to die and struggle and fight and scratch and claw just to survive. Lord, will it be okay? Can I go? Sometimes when we're in a bad place and a really good opportunity jumps in front of us, sometimes we forget to ask God if it's the right thing to do. Sometimes Satan will dangle something very important in our eyes or in our life, something that says, hey, this is good for you. This is good for you. This is good for you. And we go, yeah, it will be. Yeah, it is good for us. And we jump up and we head to it. And we forget that we needed to be on our knees and go, God, I know this looks good. I know this looks good. And I know I'm in a bad situation right now, but is this really from you? Is this really what I should be doing?
Be like Gideon.
That's what he did right here, right? He went and he built an altar to the Lord before he went, and he said, Lord, is this what I should do? And God told him, you go ahead and do this because I'm in this, right? I guarantee that if you're in a situation, it might not, you might not get down on your knees and pray a prayer and stand up and have the answer. Okay? Don't think that's going to happen. It might, but chances are it won't. Chances are it takes some time. But always pray and ask God about what you're getting ready to step into. Because it might not be the right thing. Just because it looks shiny doesn't mean it's the spoon that you need to chase. Right? All right. Just notice there, when things happen in our lives, sometimes we need to pray about it before we move forward. Always we have to pray about it. Anyway, verse 8. Now these were the names of the children of Israel. I'm going to skip this because we're getting really late. It just goes through their names and their kind of lineage and whose was whose.
Tell you how many people are going to Egypt.
How many people are going in? You're right. Let's go down to verse 26. All the persons who went with Jacob to Egypt, who came from his body, besides Jacob's sons' wives, were 66 persons in all. And the sons of Joseph, who were born to him in Egypt, were 2 persons. All the persons of his house of Jacob who went to Egypt were 70. Now, this does not count the wives. It only counts the kids. So, we had Abraham, right, who said, God said, I'm going to make you as plentiful as the sand on the seashore. And then we ended up with, 1 kid and then 4 kids and then 5 kids. Now we're up to 70. We're up to 70, okay? Verse 28, then he sent Judah before him to Joseph to point out before him the way to Goshen. And they came to the land of Goshen. Joseph made ready his chariots and went up to Goshen to meet his father Israel. And he presented himself to him and fell on his neck and wept a good while. And Israel said to Joseph, now let me die, since I have seen your face, because you are still alive. Then Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, I will go up and tell Pharaoh and say to him, my brothers and those of my father's house who were in the land of Canaan have come to me. And the men are shepherds, for their occupation has been to feed livestock, and they have brought their flocks and their herds and all they have. So it shall be when Pharaoh calls you and says, what is your occupation? Does this sound familiar? She's my sister. Right? Does this sound familiar? Gonna lie to Pharaoh, lie to the king, right? That you shall say, your servant's occupation has been with livestock from our youth even until now, both we and our fathers, that you may dwell in the land of Goshen. For every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians. Why did he say this? Why do you want him to tell him that? Why didn't he want mom and dad to move into, downtown and take over the town square and move in with him at Pharaoh's house? Joseph had a great house, right? He was a second in command. He probably had a castle that he lived in, right? A mansion. He could have moved in dad and brothers and, had condos built all around, right? He could have did it. Why did he want to do this? Why did he want them in the land of Goshen?
Because that was the best land to be.
It was the best, but there was a reason that he wanted to do what he did. Why did he tell him he was shepherds? Because, shepherds are an abomination, which means, mom or dad and the brothers wouldn't really be able to come and hang out with him in Egypt while he was, controlling things, because they were an abomination, right? So why did he tell him this?
Well, if they tell Pharaoh that, like, hey, this was our occupation, this is what we did, maybe Pharaoh is going to, this is what you guys are going to do for me.
You're kind of there. The reason he did this was in order, and it wasn't just Joseph. This is Joseph doing God's will, okay? Joseph doing God's will. It was in order to keep the Egyptians and the Israelites separate from mingling, from intermarrying, from taking on. You go over there. You go over there. See where I'm going? It's God saying, these are my people. They're going to live in your country. I'm going to give them the best of the best, but I don't want any intermingling here. Okay? Stay apart. It was God's way of separating the Israelites. All right? Then Joseph went and told Pharaoh and said, my father and my brothers, their flocks and their herds and all they possess have come from the land of Canaan. Indeed, they are in the land of Goshen. And he took 5 men from among his brothers and presented them to Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh said to his brothers, what is your occupation? And they said to Pharaoh, your servants are shepherds, both we and also our fathers. And they said to Pharaoh, we have come to dwell in the land because your servants have no pasture for their flocks, for the famine is severe in the land of Canaan. Now therefore, please let your servants dwell in the land of Goshen. Then Pharaoh spoke to Joseph, saying, your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you. Have your father and brothers dwell in the best of the land. Let them dwell in the land of Goshen. And if you know any competent men among them, then make them chief herdsmen over my livestock. Then Joseph brought in his father Jacob and set him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Jacob, how old are you? And Jacob said to Pharaoh, the days of my years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life. He's like, dude, I've been a pretty bad feller, right? And they have not attained to the days of the years of the life of my fathers, in the days of their pilgrimage. So Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from before Pharaoh. And Joseph situated his father and brothers and gave them possession in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of the Ramesses, as Pharaoh had commanded. Then Joseph provided his father, his brothers, and all his father's household with bread, according to the number in their families. Now there was no bread in all the land, for the famine was very severe, so that the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished because of the famine. And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the grain which they had bought. And Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. So when the money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, give us bread, for why should we die in your presence? For the money has failed. And Joseph said, give your livestock. Joseph was a smart guy. Joseph was a smart guy. You ain't got no money? Give me your animals, right?
It's also kind of, I mean, it's really interesting the way that he, handles all this.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's crazy. He just keeps taking, right?
Yeah.
But that was his job. That's what he was supposed to do. Okay? So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for the horses, the flocks, the cattle of the herds, and for the donkeys. Thus he fed them with bread in exchange for all their livestock that year. When that year had ended, they came to him the next year and said to him, "We will not hide from my lord that our money is gone, and my lord also has our herds of livestock. There is nothing left in the sight of my lord but our bodies and our lands. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and we and our land will be servants of Pharaoh. Give us seed that we may live and not die, and the land may not be desolate." Then Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. For every man of the Egyptians sold his field, because the famine was severe upon them. So the land became Pharaoh's. And as for the people, he moved them into the cities, from one end of the border of Egypt to the other end. Only the land of the priest he did not buy, for the priest had rations allotted to them by Pharaoh, and they ate their rations which Pharaoh gave them. Therefore they did not sell their lands. Then Joseph said to the people, "Indeed, I have bought you and your land this day for Pharaoh. Look, here is seed for you, and you shall sow the land. And it shall come to pass in the harvest that you shall give 1/5 to Pharaoh. 4/5 shall be your own, as seed for the field and for your food, for those of your household, and as food for your little ones." So they said, "You have saved our lives. Let us find favor in the sight of my lord, and we will be Pharaoh's servants." And Joseph made it a law over all the land of Egypt to this day, that Pharaoh should have 1/5, except for the land of the priests only, which did not become Pharaoh's. Joseph kind of put into order taxation, didn't he? He's kind of building the tax laws. So Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt in the country of Goshen, and they had possessions there. They grew and multiplied exceedingly. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the length of Jacob's life was 147 years. When the time drew near that Israel must die, he called his son Joseph and said to him, "Now if I have found favor in your sight, please put your hand under my thigh and deal kindly and truly with me. Please do not bury me in Egypt, but let me die with my fathers. You shall carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burial place." And he said, "I will do as you have said." Then he said, "Swear to me." And he swore to him. So Israel bowed himself on the head of the bed. And that's the end of our readings. So he's getting old. Israel's getting old. And he made Joseph swear to him that he wouldn't leave him there in the land, that he would take him back to his father's land and bury him there when he dies. And we'll find out, I guess, next week what happens. Oh.
She's with her granddaughter. She's at the house now with Dawn, but she was with Stephanie.
You can kill the video, brother.
We have to go to church on Wednesday nights because she won't